welcome. Please take a seat, get cozy and enjoy a cup of terror with me, Stefanie Valentine. Hello my spooky little pumpkins, thank you for joining me today. A Cup of Terror is a series where I talk about true crime cases that have a dash of the strange, be that supernatural or to do with the occult or just something downright odd. So we're going all the way back to 1566 to someone who many claim was the first person to be put to death for witchcraft in England. So Agnes Waterhouse, known to locals as Mother Waterhouse, lived in Hatfield Peveril, a village in Essex, England. We don't know her exact date of birth, but it is thought that she was born around 1503. She was in her 40s when, in 1542, King Henry VIII passed a new law against witchcraft. The Witchcraft Act defined witchcraft as a crime punishable by death. It was repealed 5 years later, but restored to a new act in 1562. This act stated that the use or practice of witchcraft that led to someone's death was a felony punishable by death. Lesser offences connected with witchcraft, such as making animals sick or destroying goods, came with a sentence of a year's imprisonment. Agnes, we presume, led a normal life, at least normal for someone at that time. In the summer of 1566, though, her world was turned upside down. Agnes, who was 64 years of age at the time, was accused of murder by witchcraft. 2 other women were also accused, Elizabeth Frances and Agnes's own daughter, Joan Waterhouse, who was only 18 at the time. Agnes was charged with using witchcraft to kill livestock and cause illness on some of her neighbours. She was also accused of bringing illness upon a neighbour who ended up dying. The trial took place in Chelmsford, Essex. On the 26th of July 1566, Elizabeth Frances was the first to be examined. She confessed to having a familiar, a white spotted cat, who was aptly named Satan. I think that's an awesome name for a cat, for any animal, actually. One day I would love to get a dog and name them Lucifer. I think that's really cute. Anyway, back to the story. Elizabeth got the cat from her grandmother, Mother Eve of Hatfield Peveril, who had taught her witchcraft when she was just 12 years old. According to Elizabeth, the cat could speak to her in a strange, hollow voice and would do anything for her in exchange for a drop of blood, and she had to keep it fed with bread and milk. Elizabeth confessed to stealing sheep and confessed to murder. There was a man called Andrew Biles who she claimed had got her pregnant, but had refused to marry her. She first instructed Satan to destroy Andrew's property, like his livestock and other belongings, which he did, but that wasn't good enough for Elizabeth. She then instructed the cat to kill Andrew, which he did. The cat was said to have known a lot about herbs and had apparently told Elizabeth which herb to drink, which would terminate the pregnancy. Elizabeth eventually set her sights on another man, Francis, so she decided to ensnare him. They slept together and she fell pregnant. They married, and 3 months later, Elizabeth gave birth to a baby girl. Elizabeth very quickly became very unhappy with her life. She and Francis were arguing a lot. Her life wasn't what she expected it to be, and so she instructed the cat to kill her baby, who was just 6 months old at the time. She still wasn't happy though, so she instructed the cat to afflict her husband with lameness. The cat did this by lying in Francis's shoe as a toad, and when Francis went to put on his shoe and he touched the toad with his foot, his leg became affected with a lameness that he was never able to recover from. Agnes Waterhouse, also known as Mother Waterhouse, as I said earlier, she was questioned next on the same day. So Elizabeth kept the cat for like 15 years. Some say that she became quite tired of it all and tired of the cat. One day she came across Agnes, who was on her way to the ovens. Now, ovens weren't a standard feature in homes back then, so villagers would have communal ovens, bake houses that people would go to bake their bread. Elizabeth asked Agnes to give her a cake and that she would give her something in return that would make her life better. She swapped the cat for a cake. Elizabeth allegedly taught Agnes the same way that her grandmother had taught her, instructing Agnes to call the cat Satan and that she had to give him her blood and bread and milk. Agnes confessed to getting Satan to kill one of her pigs to demonstrate his power to her. In exchange for this, she gave him a chicken and a drop of her blood. She would give him a drop of blood every time he did something for her, pricking her hand or her face and letting him suck the blood. Allegedly, where Elizabeth and Agnes pricked their skin, there remained a red spot which still could be seen on their skin forever, basically. Agnes also confessed to having her neighbours' cows and geese killed after various arguments with them. She seemed to argue a lot with her neighbours, always having some sort of spat with them, it seemed. So some of the arguments that she had with her neighbours and the accusations are as follows. Father Kersey had offended her in some way, so she instructed Satan to kill 3 of his pigs, which he did. She rewarded him, as before, with a chicken and a drop of her blood. She fell out with Widow Gooday, and she instructed Satan to drown her cow. Once again, she rewarded him with chicken and blood. Now, these are just a few of the instances where she apparently got the cat to do her bidding. She also caused other forms of mischief, such as ruining her neighbours' brewing and butter making. She also fell out with one of her other neighbours, William Finn, and his wife, and she instructed the cat to, quote, kill him with a bloody slice. I'm not quite sure what they mean by this, but whatever it was, William ended up dying on the 1st of November 1565, having suffered from an illness said to be caused by Agnes. It was after his death that people officially accused her and had her arrested. Eventually, Agnes also confessed to not having a happy marriage to her husband. She therefore instructed the cat to kill her husband, which he did about 9 years earlier in 1557. Agnes would keep the cat in a pot filled with wool, but she eventually needed the wool as she had gotten very poor and she needed the money. She prayed that the cat would turn into a toad, and somehow it did, apparently. So finally, Agnes's daughter, 18-year-old Joan, went on trial and she was questioned. She was accused of using witchcraft as well, and accused of bewitching the neighbour's daughter. Joan claimed to have only seen Satan once in her mother's hand as a toad. She heard her mother call the animal Satan, but other than that, she didn't really know anything about it, and Joan hadn't learnt or been taught anything with regards to witchcraft. She only used the animal to play a joke on the neighbour's daughter. One day when Agnes was away, Joan was feeling hungry, and so she went looking for some food. She went to her neighbour's house and asked for food, but the neighbour's child, Agnes Brown, refused to give her any. So Joan decided to call for Satan, as she had seen her mother do before. Satan appeared to her, allegedly in the form of a big black dog. He asked her what she wanted of him, and she told him that she wanted him to scare Agnes. In exchange, she would have to surrender her body and soul to him. She was afraid of him and didn't really want to agree to anything, but she just wanted to get rid of him, kind of get on with the joke, so she agreed to his terms. Off he went to the neighbour's home to scare the girl in the form of the scary-looking dog with horns on his head. So Joan didn't really use witchcraft or ask the animal to do anything too terrible. It was, more of a prank, but unfortunately, because she admitted to what she had done and testified to the supposed supernatural cat's existence, to the court it appeared that witchcraft really was real, and that Agnes and Elizabeth were indeed witches. Agnes Waterhouse and her daughter Joan were examined and questioned a second time on the 27th of July 1566. Agnes pled guilty to witchcraft. She confessed to everything again. She confessed that she had a white cat who she had told to kill her neighbour's livestock. She confessed to the killing of the other animals. She confessed to using the cat to murder her neighbour, William. We don't know if they used any force to get a confession from her, but it might be that she willingly confessed to the crimes because her daughter was also being accused of witchcraft, and maybe she thought that if she confessed and took the blame, it would save her daughter, perhaps. Agnes Brown, the 12-year-old neighbour, was brought in and questioned as well, and provided the main evidence against Agnes Waterhouse, which ended up convicting her. Agnes Brown described the demon dog that was haunting her. It was a black dog with an ape-like face. It had a short tail with a chain and a silver whistle around its neck, and it also had a pair of horns on its head. Agnes Brown said that the dog asked her for some butter, which she refused, so the dog, who had the key to the milk house door, opened the door himself and stole some butter. Agnes went and told her aunt about what had happened, and the priest was sent for, and Agnes was told to pray to God and call on the name of Jesus. The next day the dog returned once again. Satan, the cat in the form of a dog, would come back to Agnes Brown a few more times, with the last visit on Wednesday the 23rd of July 1566, only a few days before the trial. On that last Wednesday, Agnes said that the dog returned with a knife in his mouth, and he threatened to kill her, saying, quote, that he would thrust his knife to my heart, but he would make me to die. The most damning evidence apparently was when Agnes Brown asked the dog who his dame was, to which he nodded and wagged his head towards Agnes Waterhouse's home. The court asked Agnes Waterhouse to call for her familiar and make him appear at the trial, but apparently Agnes had lost all power over him. She was asked if the cat sucked her blood, and apparently she said that he didn't. They looked at her face, though, and found various spots, kind of all over her face and one on her chin. She had fed him her blood, apparently because, spots and blemishes don't just happen naturally to everyone. On the 29th of July, 1566, 2 days after the trial came to an end, Agnes Waterhouse was executed. She was hanged in front of a crowd at the gallows in Chelmsford. She was the first person to be executed in England for witchcraft. Technically, but I'll talk more about that later. On the day of her execution, she confessed that, yes, she had been a witch, and she had used witchcraft for the last 25 years and had done many awful things, apparently. She asked God for forgiveness for all of the devilish deeds that she had done. She also confessed to sending the cat to one of her neighbours, Wardle, who was a tailor. Wardle was another one of her neighbours who she had fallen out with, and she sent Satan to destroy him and his goods, his belongings, but Satan returned and told her that he wasn't able to do anything to Wardle because Wardle's faith in God was so strong that he had no power to hurt him. As for Elizabeth Frances, somehow she managed to avoid being found guilty of witchcraft and avoided execution, receiving a much lighter sentence. Considering that she confessed to killing her lover and her baby daughter, I'm very surprised, to be honest. I don't know if she agreed to testify against Agnes in order to get a lighter sentence. I'm really not sure. But 13 years later, Elizabeth would eventually be hanged after a second conviction. And it actually emerged in the 1579 trial that Elizabeth and Agnes were in fact related. They were sisters. Joan, Agnes's daughter, was cleared during the trial, her testimony unfortunately helping to convict her mother and Elizabeth, but in doing so, she cleared her name. Agnes's case grabbed the public's attention and it was talked about a lot. A booklet about the case was put together by a publisher at the time. The title of the booklet was The Examination and Confession of Certain Witches at Chelmsford in the County of Essex. You can actually view the pamphlet online. I will pop a link in the description below if you are interested in reading it. It is written in Old English, so it's a bit tricky to read, but it's fascinating, so I do recommend it. A portrait of Agnes was added and it had her name Mother Waterhouse at the top, but it's not actually her. The picture was just a woodcut from the publisher's stock room with a space to add any name to the woman shown. So it's essentially a 16th century stock photo, and the same image was probably used for other witches condemned to death. So, was Agnes really the first witch to be executed in England? Yes, technically, Agnes was the first person executed for witchcraft in England. However, there had been witches who had been executed in England prior to Agnes, but they had been tried and found guilty for things like heresy or treason, not witchcraft. In fact, my next cup of terror is probably going to be concerning one of those women. But Agnes Waterhouse was the first witch to have been sentenced to death based on an accusation of witchcraft, and who was executed under the new Witchcraft Act. And she was the first famous witch who was written about in the news at the time. The pamphlet of her trial that was produced at the time inspired others to continue making pamphlets and booklets on trials that were particularly important or popular at the time. We don't know if Agnes really thought she was a witch and if she practiced any form of witchcraft, or whether she was just an ordinary innocent woman who was just trying to protect her daughter and took the blame. Joan thankfully was acquitted, so if Agnes was taking the fall, I hope she at least felt better knowing that her daughter was safe. Agnes might have been suffering with some sort of illness or disease that made her believe that the cat really was talking to her and doing all of these things for her. And once again, the lack of medical knowledge would have meant that, people would have thought like, the devil, to explain various events and behaviours. And as for her husband's death that she confessed to, I kind of get the feeling that it was completely natural and innocent, but maybe she felt guilty, for feeling glad that he was dead. They didn't have the happiest marriage, something like that. Maybe the guilt ended up making her think that she was the reason for his death. Nevertheless, it's another sad story of yet another woman falling victim to mass hysteria and ludicrous accusations and charges. And as for young Agnes Brown's testimony, well, we all know that cats can't turn into demon dogs and they can't talk and open doors with keys. So was she just a child looking to cause a bit of trouble? Maybe not understanding the repercussions of what she was saying? Perhaps. Anywho, that's the very fascinating story of the first witch executed in England. So thank you for hanging out with me today, my darlings. It's a bit more casual, I know. We had a bit of a faff getting this video filmed, but anyway, we got there. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and join me next time for another cup of terror.